Picture this. It is 6:15 in the morning. The rain is coming sideways across a half-finished concrete house, and I am standing in the mud with a key that does not open anything. There is a blue plastic tarp snapping above what was supposed to be my kitchen. Water is running down the unpainted block walls. A rooster is going off somewhere behind the banana trees, and every few seconds I can hear a hammer from the house next door, the house that actually got finished. Mine has no windows, no front door, and no workers. Just 3 sacks of hardened cement, a rusted wheelbarrow, and my name written in black marker on a piece of plywood. I had paid $94,600. $94,600. That number still feels different when I say it out loud. My name is Dennis Cole. I am 71 years old. I grew up outside Toledo, Ohio, and I spent 34 years working as a municipal building inspector. I was the man who told contractors when a footing was too shallow, when a stair rail was unsafe, when a permit did not match the work. I knew how houses were supposed to go together. I knew how paperwork was supposed to protect people. At least I thought I did. I am telling this story because there is a particular kind of confidence that comes with getting older. You have survived layoffs, funerals, bad bosses, medical scares, raising children, maybe a divorce. You start to believe you can smell trouble before it reaches the front porch. I believe that about myself. Then I came to the Philippines, trusted the wrong person, and discovered that experience in one country does not automatically become wisdom in another. 3 years before that morning in the rain, my life in Ohio had narrowed down to a recliner, a microwave, and a calendar full of doctor appointments I did not actually need. My wife, Carol, had died after 42 years of marriage. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months from the first pain in her side to the funeral home asking me what color dress she should wear. After she was gone, the house became unbearable. It was not dramatic. Nothing haunted me. It was worse than that. Everything stayed exactly where she had left it. Her gardening gloves were on a shelf in the garage. A yellow mug with a chipped handle was still beside the coffee maker. I would wake up, make 1 cup instead of 2, and feel the whole day collapse before it started. My daughter, Melissa, wanted me closer to her in Columbus. She had a husband, 2 teenagers, a demanding job, and a finished basement she kept calling my suite. I knew she loved me. I also knew what moving into that basement would do to both of us. I would begin as dad and slowly become another item on her weekly list. Pick up groceries, take Evan to practice, check dad's prescriptions, make sure dad is not lonely. I could see the future, and I did not like the way it made me feel. I tried the respectable solutions, a grief group, volunteer work, a used fishing boat I sold 4 months later. I even toured 2 retirement communities. One had a little sign in the dining room that said Taco Tuesday. The tacos were cold, the television was loud, and every man at my table spoke about his blood pressure. I drove home and sat in my car for 20 minutes because I could not make myself go inside. That was when I started watching videos about retiring overseas. It began with Portugal, then Mexico, then Thailand. The recommendation system did what it does, and one night a video appeared showing an American man drinking coffee on a small balcony in Tagaytay. Behind him was a green ridge dropping toward Tall Lake, with the volcano sitting in the distance under a layer of morning cloud. He said his rent was 28,000 pesos a month, roughly $500 at the exchange rate then. He ate fresh fruit every day. He had a cleaner twice a week. He said people still looked you in the eye when they spoke to you. I watched that video 3 times. Then I watched 50 more. I joined expat forums and Facebook groups. People argued about hospitals, visas, electricity bills, and whether $1,500 a month was enough. Beneath the noise, I noticed that many people living there were ordinary retired mechanics, teachers, truck drivers, and military men. Men like me. I flew to Manila for a 6-week trial visit. I told Melissa it was a vacation because saying retirement made it sound permanent, and neither of us was ready for that word. The first week was difficult. The heat hit me like an open oven, and Manila traffic made no sense to my Ohio brain. I bought the wrong phone plan, overpaid for a taxi, and smiled whenever I did not understand what was happening. Then I went south to Tagaytay. The air was cooler there. My apartment sat behind a bakery off Aguinaldo Highway. The rent was 26,000 pesos a month, around $470 then, with a small balcony and a view of somebody else's mango tree. Every morning smelled of warm bread and butter while tricycles buzzed past the gate. I developed a routine: coffee on the balcony, a walk before traffic, lunch at Mahogany Market, where I learned to order bulalo and stopped pretending I could finish the whole bowl. The local barber remembered my name after 2 visits. Daily life kept placing people in front of me. For the first time since Carol died, I had days I did not need to survive. I could simply live them. That feeling made me reckless. About a month into my stay, I met an American named Rick at a small restaurant. He was 64, from Arizona, and had been in the Philippines for 9 years. He had the relaxed confidence every new arrival notices. He knew which bank had the shortest line, which clinic had an English-speaking cardiologist, which grocery store carried decent coffee, and which roads to avoid on weekends. He never seemed impressed with himself. That was part of why I trusted him. Rick heard I had worked as a building inspector and said, "Then you are exactly the kind of guy who should build here instead of throwing money away on rent." I laughed. I told him I knew foreigners could not simply buy land in their own name. That was the one rule every expat group repeated. He nodded and said, "Of course, you do it properly. Long lease, separate ownership of the improvements, independent contracts, nothing unusual." He made it sound boring. Boring is persuasive when you are afraid of being foolish. 2 weeks later, he drove me to a modest lot outside the busiest part of Tagaytay. It sat on a sloping road with coffee plants along one edge and a concrete drainage channel in front. Through the trees, you could see a strip of Tal Lake. The owner was a woman named Lorna. Her brother June handled construction. Rick said he had known them for years and showed me a clean bungalow June had supposedly built. We only viewed it from the road because the foreign owner was away. The proposal was a 25-year land lease paid in advance, plus a separate construction contract for a 2-bedroom house with solar backup, a covered porch, and grab bars in the bathroom. Total projected cost, $86,000 plus permits and furniture. The sale of my Ohio house could cover it. American rent might cost $2,000 a month before utilities, and I had watched nursing costs consume my mother's savings. A house in long lease felt like protection. That was the word I used. Protection. I did not see that I was about to exchange a simple monthly risk for a complicated permanent one. I flew home, sold my house, donated most of the furniture, and moved into Melissa's basement while the paperwork was prepared. She did not shout. She asked questions, which was worse. Who was my lawyer? Who had verified the title? Why was Rick involved in every conversation? Why were large payments due before clear milestones? I had an answer for everything. The lawyer understood local procedures. The title had a number and a stamp. Rick was helping me navigate the culture. Materials had to be secured before prices rose. I know. Famous last words. The lawyer had been recommended by Rick. His office had framed certificates and a heavy wooden desk. He confirmed that I would not own the land, then explained the lease and construction agreement as if everything were routine. I did not understand every term, but I understood the tone. Calm, professional, certain. That tone cost me more than any lie. I made the first transfer from Ohio, $32,000. Rick sent photographs within a week. The lot had been cleared. Stakes marked the footprint. Workers were digging. Jun stood in the middle of the site holding rolled plans and giving a thumbs up. I felt vindicated. The second payment was $28,000 after the foundation and columns were complete. I was back in Tagaytay and visited every few days. Concrete columns rose from the ground. Hollow blocks were stacked nearby. Men tied steel in the heat while a radio played old love songs. I brought cold water for the workers. I took videos for Melissa. I stood where the kitchen would be and told her the sink would face the trees. For a while, the dream had walls. Then progress slowed. Jun blamed rain, a supplier, and workers leaving for a family emergency. Each explanation made sense by itself. I had inspected enough projects in Ohio to know schedules were optimistic documents, not commandments. Rick told me not to act like an impatient foreigner. Those were his exact words. You do not want to insult good people because you are used to American speed, he said. That landed where he intended it to. I did not want to become the loud foreigner demanding American speed, so I stayed polite and approved another payment because June said the roof materials would only be released after the invoice was settled. $21,000. The roof materials never arrived. The next week, Jones stopped answering his phone. Lorna said her brother was sick. Rick said he was handling it. The lawyer said contractual disputes required patience. Everyone told me a different version in the same soothing voice. I drove to the site one morning and found no workers. I drove back the next day. Still none. On the third visit, a neighbor came through the trees and asked whether I was the American paying for the house. I said yes. He looked at the ground before he spoke. That is the moment I knew. He told me Jun owed money to several suppliers. He said the same workers had been moved between projects whenever a new payment came in. Money from one customer finished part of another customer's house. Mine had not been a construction project. It had been a bucket in a leaking chain. I called Rick. No answer. I went to his apartment. Empty. Not empty like a man had stepped out for groceries. Empty like a man had planned his departure. No motorcycle. No chairs on the balcony. No curtains. The security guard said he had left 2 nights earlier with suitcases. My hands began shaking so badly I had to sit on the curb. I was 69 years old, a retired building inspector sitting beside a drainage ditch in the Philippines, realizing I had been used as the newest source of cash in an old scheme. The humiliation was worse than the fear. I did not call Melissa for 3 days. I claimed I needed facts first, but I could not bear to hear concern in her voice. It would mean she had been right, and that I had become an old man who could be talked out of his savings by someone who knew which words to use. When I finally called, I tried to sound calm. I said there was a contractual complication. She listened for about 30 seconds and said, "Dad, how much is gone?" I started explaining the payment schedule. She asked again, "How much is gone?" $94,600. There was silence. Then she said, "Are you safe?" "Not, I told you so." "Not, how could you do this?" "Are you safe?" I cried after we hung up, not neat tears. I sat on the floor beside my bed with my back against the wall and made the kind of sounds you hope nobody hears through an apartment ceiling. The next months were paperwork, fees, and waiting. I hired a different lawyer with no connection to anyone in the deal. She collected every document and bank record, then told me what I did not want to hear. A notary stamp did not prove the promises were true. A copied title was not independent verification. My lease had weaknesses, the construction milestones were vague, and receipts described materials that never reached my site. The lawyer I trusted had protected the transaction, not me. That sentence stayed with me. He protected the transaction, not me. We filed complaints and discovered Rick had received an undisclosed referral payment from Jun. He had also encouraged 2 other foreigners into connected projects. One lost a deposit. The other had a finished house, but no secure long-term arrangement for the land beneath it. There were no handcuffs or dramatic recovery. Jun resurfaced through an attorney. Lorna denied knowing how funds were used. The first lawyer said he had only prepared documents from information provided by the parties. Rick remained gone. After nearly a year, I accepted a settlement involving the incomplete structure and a partial repayment spread over time. I sold my interest to a Filipino couple who understood the title situation and wanted to finish the house. By the time fees were paid and the settlement money arrived, I recovered a little over $27,000. That means I lost roughly $67,000. $67,000 was Carol's careful saving. It was overtime shifts, packed lunches, vacations we did not take, and 34 winters of getting up before sunrise. I cannot make that number noble. I cannot call it tuition and pretend the lesson was worth the price. It was not worth the price, but I'm still here. I did not move back to Ohio. I packed 2 suitcases and looked at flights, but one evening the woman from the bakery knocked because she had not seen me all day. Tess brought a bowl of arroz caldo and said, "Sir Dennis, eat while it is hot." The barber called to check on me. A neighbor drove me to a legal appointment. Melissa flew over and helped organize documents. She met the people in my ordinary life and understood that the country was not the scam. Certain people had scammed me. There is a difference. I moved to a smaller rental for 22,000 pesos a month, about $400 then. 1 bedroom, a covered balcony, and a view of a calamansi tree. Almost everything I own fits into 4 boxes, and I sleep better than I did in my paid-off house in Ohio. Here is what I wish somebody had said to me before I wired the first dollar. Do not surrender your judgment to another foreigner because he has lived here longer. A familiar accent does not mean a shared interest. He may know the roads, banks, and restaurants while leading you toward a deal that pays him. Hire your own qualified professional separately. Pay that person to challenge the deal, not explain why it works. Do not confuse notarization with verification, a photocopy with a clean title, or visible construction with financial control. I watched walls rise and believed my money had become concrete, yet I could not trace which payment bought which material or what happened if the builder disappeared. And do not rush to buy or build because rent feels like wasted money. Rent purchased the one thing my property deal took away from me, the ability to leave. Rent for a year. Live through the rainy season. Learn which roads flood, how far the hospital feels at 5 in the afternoon, and what daily life costs before deciding what permanent life should look like. Maybe you will buy a condominium you are eligible to own, enter a properly reviewed lease, or decide that renting gives you more peace. Not every property deal is crooked, but love for a place can make caution feel insulting, and that is when you need more caution. I still pass the house sometimes. The Filipino couple finished it, painted it pale green, and added white porch railings. Once I saw a child drawing with chalk on the step where I had planned to drink my morning coffee. It hurt the first time. Now it mostly feels like looking at a life that belonged to somebody else. The life I have is smaller. I make coffee in a kitchen I do not own and sit under a roof somebody else repairs. The air smells like wet leaves and charcoal smoke. Tess sends bread when she has extra. Melissa calls every Sunday and we speak more honestly than before. I came here because I was afraid of becoming a burden. Then I lost enough money to feel like a fool. What I found after all that was that dignity does not come from owning a house or proving your children wrong. It comes from telling the truth about what happened and refusing to let shame make the rest of your decisions. So if you are sitting in your home tonight watching videos of cheap land, beautiful views, and a retirement that seems to solve every problem, slow down. The Philippines may be right for you. It is still right for me. But do not buy a dream because somebody makes the paperwork sound boring. Do not wire money because you are afraid the opportunity will disappear. Do not assume your age makes you impossible to fool. I was 69 standing in the rain beside an unfinished house holding a key that opened nothing. Today I keep that key in the top drawer beside my passport, not because I think it will ever open a door, because I never want to forget what it cost me to believe it already had.